Good morning, bright and early. I hope everyone is well this morning. I may give you a few minutes to filter in those of you who are planning to attend before I get started. Let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. I just moved my mic a little closer to the mouth. Probably helps a little bit. Hope everyone's got a nice cup of coffee. I have. I've also got a refill in the flask. Still working on kicking the caffeine habit. All right, looks like we've got a few people filtering in. Good to see. Welcome to the forest. It looks cold, but it's okay here on the ground. Morning, Kev. Yeah, I've got my trusty insulated bottle, which so far has only been used for cold. Today is its first coffee test, so we'll see how it goes. Oh, Alex is pumping in some donations there, so I'll take this opportunity to flip up my browser and just mention the Norfolk Developers has a official Patreon page. If you find these streams useful and our other events and streams or the community itself, please do consider jumping on the Patreon. You'd be surprised how many services we have to pay for to keep the lights on. But anyway, that's enough about that. Oh, that was my meme search. Careful there. So I guess we'll get started. I assume someone will let me know if the sound's off or anything's broken. So we're going to be talking about Next.js, but the focus of these streams, this is part one of probably 4 parts. The plan is for us to build a very similar app, I'm not sure how similar yet, to the app that Alex was building last month on the YouTube streams in Laravel. I think the goal of these streams really is to kind of show the reality of development. So we're preparing a bit, but we're not rewriting an app. We're not copy and pasting. Basically, that's the idea. We're showing the process. So I work with these tools. I work with Blitz in my spare time. I don't use it professionally at the moment, but there's a chance that might happen in the future. You never know. But today, to explain how Blitz works, and kind of an intro into the full stack React side of things. Hello. Hey Alex. Yeah, I do have music. I've got Pretzel. Let me know if it's too loud or if it's annoying or distracting and I can turn it off or turn it down. But yeah, it's a royalty-free music platform basically, which means we won't get DMCA'd, but means that we don't have to have silence. And really the main reason is it masks my MacBook fan, which when I'm streaming at 86 degrees can get a little intense. Cool, as long as everyone's happy. I can't hear it myself. There it goes, that was a bit more audible. All right. So Blitz is a full stack React framework. What does that actually mean? If you've used Ruby on Rails before, or Laravel, the PHP, I think Laravel was originally inspired by Ruby on Rails as well. I'm not sure about that. Please fact check me if I am wrong. As Blitz's mission statement says, and I'm paraphrasing Brandon Bayer here, it feels like it's time for another bundling process to happen, certainly in React development. So where it started out, where we would have no build process, and we'd try and build a Webpack config and things would get really complicated, and it seemed easy to begin with, but as you got more into production needs, it got more and more complicated. And the meme I was looking for earlier was the one with the big, enormous physics chalkboard. And with all the equations on it. Looks like quantum mechanics or something, and it just says nearly got my production React config working, and that was the case for some time a few years back. And the answer to that was the Facebook team releasing Create React App. Create React App made it basically a one command setup to get your project working and took care of all the production stuff you needed to get your app going. That's great, but there was one major downside, which was that it was entirely client-side. There was no server-side rendering. Whereas normally you would serve HTML to a search engine, in the case of Create React App, actually you just serve a shell, an empty shell, and then you run some JavaScript and the app is populated in the page. And that works fine for lots of apps, so I'm not critiquing it in any way. But in some cases, you need to server render that HTML, provide it to search engines, or you need to provide social cards to Facebook and Twitter and that kind of thing. So you need some kind of existing HTML, and either you want to generate that HTML up front at build time because you know what it needs to be, or you want to generate it on the fly in real time by making API requests, or you want to do something in between. Next came along and it does both of those. It basically provides all of the flexibility you need to do server-side rendering or to do an app client-side only app similar to Create React App. And it does some other cool stuff with static generation and static regeneration. And we might not get into that in too much detail for now. But all of this is to say, Next.js makes up a major foundation on which Blitz builds. And then on top of Next.js, Blitz adds Prisma. Now, Prisma is a type-safe database access client, basically. You provide a data model and it generates a TypeScript client to allow you to create and update and delete data in a Postgres or MySQL database. So last year or so, I saw this and was thinking, this might work quite well with Next.js to allow me to build full stack apps. And back then things weren't quite ready, so I spent a bit of time, wasted quite a bit of time messing about with it, and then didn't really get it working. Eventually got too busy with something else, disappeared off, forgot all about it. And then Blitz came out. And Blitz tied these two things together. So that's probably enough talking for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up a brand new empty Next project from scratch, show you a few of the features of Next.js, then I'm going to load up, add Prisma to the project, create a model in the database, create an item in that database using the Prisma client, and then pull that data out again. And that's basically our first port of call. So let me just write some notes down so we know what we're doing. So we're going to have a look at Next.js. We're going to look at routing and data fetching as a first example, and then we're going to look at Prisma, and we're going to look at creating a model, generating the database client, and the final thing will be creating some content and querying it. And then after that we might get into deployment, API, etc. So let me make a double layered list here just so we can see what's going on. This might be annoying some of you who would do this a lot more neatly. I'm going to make that lowercase. I'm going to make that lowercase r. Yeah, we won't worry about that too much. I'm going to pop that down there as our list of what we're going to be doing. And I'm going to flip over to my terminal. All right. So I'm going to make a new directory. Let me know if this is big enough and you can see. And I'm going to call it nor-dev next. And then I'm going to enter that directory. What's that? Or impressing us that don't do it at all. Oh, I see. I don't know about that. Depends what I said. What did I say? All right, so empty directory. So there is a command to create a Next.js project called create next app, which works great, and you probably want to use that in most cases. But in this case, just to show you how little you actually need to run a Next app, it's worth just giving this quick demo from scratch. So I'm gonna npm init, create a new npm repo, and all that does is just create the package.json file. So that's the minimal package.json file it's created. We'll worry about the defaults are fine. We'll worry about the license and stuff another time. So now we've got that, we can run npm install, and we're going to need React DOM because we're in the browser, and Next. I probably should have used yarn because it's probably cached it locally better than npm, but never mind. We'll just watch as my CPU goes up to 100 degrees and my fans ramp up. That's just par for the course with a MacBook in 2020, sadly. Of course, installing probably 500 megabytes of node modules, but that's neither here nor there. So while that's installing, we will have React app. There's 3 packages: React DOM, and Next. That's all we need. So now we can open that up in our editor. And I was actually a little bit early. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a directory called pages. So we've now got a package.json, package lock.json, which is locking those packaged versions, and a pages directory. And then inside that pages, I'm going to make an index.tsx file. Now I'm going to open it in the editor. Now I can open the index file, and I can export a function index root, and let's say hello world. All right, so that's all you need for a Next app. I'm not kidding. I'm going to add a script here, dev, that runs next dev. Oops, put that comma there, and that's all we need. So now if I open up my terminal here and I run npm run dev, that command we just created, with a bit of luck, oh no, because I'm using TypeScript. So Next is really helpful here. I've used a .tsx file extension, which means my intention is to use TypeScript. So Next has said, oh, looks like you're trying to use TypeScript. You probably want to install TypeScript, which is a good idea. And then the type definitions for React and for Node.js. So we'll just follow that advice and do what it says. So this is quickly adding dependencies to our project, but they're all good ones. Don't worry about that. So now we can do npm run dev again, that script we made. And it detected we're using TypeScript and created a tsconfig.json file for us, which is very kind. So we can see that here. It just sets up some defaults. One thing to note is it puts you in strict mode false. If you like strict mode, best thing to do is turn that on as soon as you can. Otherwise, you'll think everything's all fine, and then realize it's perhaps not. All right, so that's up and running. Let's pull up our Firefox window, and there's our hello world. Cool. Look at that. So from our index.tsx file, all we really need to get a page up and running is just these 3 lines, just a function that returns essentially some HTML, although in this case it's JSX because we're in JavaScript. So I always find that quite cool, you know, how you can just, with 3 lines, considering how far we've come from the time when we had to do a lot of create React app stuff, like build the Webpack config yourself. You just don't have to worry about that stuff in the majority of cases now. On the plus side, with Next.js, if you do need to edit the Webpack config, you can. It's available, and you don't have to jump through any hoops to do what you need. The only hoop you have to jump through really is to be aware of the server-side rendering and how each top-level page is an potential entry point into the app for server rendering. So I'm just going to quickly point out that we've got some, this is way better in Chrome, isn't it? Let's do it in Chrome instead. It's not much better in Chrome, but it's a bit better. So if we search in here, we can see there's hello world, look, in the view source. So although this is a JavaScript app and a React app, even with just our 3-line function, we've got a server rendered HTML output here, which is pretty cool, I think. Don't know, your mileage may vary, of course. So yeah, that's where it starts, really. And then Next has a really limited API. It doesn't do a great deal. So let me just quickly show you a few of the other pieces. Let's make a second page called page 2. I mean, blow your mind with creativity here, but we'll change that to page 2 root, and we'll change that to say hello page 2. Cool. And then if we then just type in /page2, hello page 2, that already works. Cool. How do we navigate between the two? Well, Next provides a component called link, which you can get from the Next link package. And in our main page, I'll write a link. Now, this is one of the weird APIs. You actually put the href on the link component, and then you put an a tag without an href inside link, which I admit is strange, but I'm assured there was a good reason for it. I think it's so that you can actually make other things links, although I don't quite know why you would. Who knows? Anyway, that will make a link to page 2. So if I just go back to page 1 and click page 2, hello page 2. How cool is that? You might notice that it's quite fast. I mean, it would be fast in any situation on localhost, but Next does some client-side stuff here as well, which means that this will be about that fast in production as well, which is kind of cool. So I'm just going to copy this link to page 2 and go to page 2 and add it to page 2 as well. I'm going to import link again. I'm not going to type it in, I'm just going to copy and paste. And I'm going to make that go to the index root and change that to say go home. Okay, so go home, page 2, go home, page 2, go home. Nice, simple, basic stuff, but necessary. Not going to get far without that sort of thing, are we? Okay, cool. So going back to our index again. Next, let's go to the Next docs, because you will always have to look these up, as far as I can tell. There's no nice way to get TypeScript to just tell you what these are or fill in the details. So there are these 3 primary data fetching methods. Get static props is a way to do a static page generation. Now, I should probably demo this as I talk about it. So get static props is just a function that gets run at build time in order to provide some data to the page when it's created. So if we copy this definition here, and then I'm actually going to go down to the TypeScript defs and make sure I've got the right types here as well. If anyone knows a way to get it to do this without me having to look it up every time. Cool. All right, so that's a bit of a annoying way to have to do these things. But as it says here, just get some space here. Right, will be passed to the page component as props. What does that mean? So if I put something in here and I say, I don't know, content, good dog. Maybe we'll find a good dog meme to add later. If someone's got a good dog meme, feel free to post it. So what does this actually do? What does that mean? It means that in here I can get content. That's what it means. And then if I render content here and go to the page, good dog. And if I change this to say bad dog, although why would you wouldn't say that? Don't say that, change it back. Okay. So you can see that every time we refresh, we get this piece of data. So that's cool. It could be anything. And at this point, I'm going to also open up my package.json, and I'm going to add in another script, npm script called build, and that's just going to run next build like that. And then I'm going to npm run build, and we're going to watch that run, and we're going to see the output that comes out from the next build process. And then we're going to talk about what it means. So here are the pages. We've got a root index page, which is our index.tsx, and a page 2, which is our page2.tsx. And then a bit of details about our JavaScript bundle. Now 59.5 kilobytes is basically your entry level Next project. If that feels like too much for you, it's a valid argument, but also how many images have you got on your page? So obviously you don't have to execute your images, so it's not really that good of an argument. Anyway, we won't get too sidetracked there. What's important here is these dots. This one's filled in and these two are open. What does that mean? Well, here's the key. So you can see there's 4 types, and ISR doesn't have a dot. I don't know why. Maybe we run out of icons. We'll ignore server rendering for now, but we'll look at static and we'll look at SSG. Now static is what our page 2 is, and it's static because it has absolutely no data fetching functions. It's just a function that runs and returns some static HTML. It has no requirements to go off and get data from anywhere. There's no reason to delay it. We know exactly what's on this page up front. We can just generate it at build time and just serve it up as a static HTML file. That works great. This SSG one is kind of the same thing, but it runs this data function and provides these props to the component at build time. So the result is the same. It's a static HTML file that you can stuff on a CDN somewhere, no problemo. But it also can be provided dynamic props, which is kind of cool. Now there's a sibling function called get server side props, which actually is going to, I can change that function and it's going to work in exactly the same way if I run next dev again. So we should see exactly the same output, no change at all. Sort of good, dog. It's about as bad as it gets in most cases, right? Sort of good. Alright, so you can see that does the same thing. But now, if I quit that and run build again, and it only take a little while, you'll see that the home page is a lambda, has got a little lambda symbol by it. And that means that it's a function. It will run as a lambda function, and every time this page is requested, this function will run. So perhaps with static content this doesn't really make much sense. Why would you do that? But if we wanted to call an API in here, we could very easily do, data equals await fetch, I don't know, GitHub API or something. Or any API. It's going to be a regret. I'm going to regret this doing this live, aren't I? Not having an example endpoint to call. How do you get GitHub stars endpoint? It's not going to be it, is it? Oh, look there. Okay, let's see if this works. It'll be, what was it, API? This is a bad plan. Why am I doing this live? And I'm going to pick a repo that has no stargazers, and its fetch is also going to be wrong probably. And we can do data.json probably. We might have to serialize it, but we'll see. Let's try it. See what happens like. That's not right. It's that one. It's going to error. Yeah. Because we need to serialize the response. So let's not do that there. Let's just, for demonstration purposes, turn that back to good dog. We will console log out the JSON. When we run this, we should see it over here. No? Okay, my endpoint is wrong. I should have looked this up first. Oh, look, here it is. Here it is. We probably need this, right? Da 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 da. Right, if this doesn't work, I'll abandon that plan. Oh, it does work. Sort of. Oh, it's a promise. We need to await this. Run again. And it's an empty array. Very disappointing. Empty array because, so why did we need to serialize that? Oh, because it was a promise. There we go. So now if we log this out, we should get this on the client. Where's our console? There it is, look, empty array of stargazers. So, I don't know, pick a popular project. Let's do Blitz.js, since that's what we're talking about. What is it? Blitz-js/blitz. So now when we refresh this, oops, that one. Okay, that doesn't work either. All right, we should abandon this. Never do things on the fly. That wasn't part of the demo that I was thinking of doing. Back to good dog. It's much safer that way. The point is, you can do asynchronous stuff in get server-side props or get static props. And that comes in very useful in some situations when you want to generate a bunch of stuff. It's get static props that you'll be using if you are choosing between Next and Gatsby, for example. Get static props is Next.js's answer to what Gatsby does, effectively. It's a little bit more low level than Gatsby and some of the Gatsby plugins, but sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But yeah, the mileage may vary. All right, so there's one other thing whilst we're talking about this routing stuff that's going to be important when we start hooking up Prisma. How are we doing for time? Wow, we're an hour in. That's gone quick. Right, get moving. Let's add a folder here called API. Now, what does that do, you might ask? Let me add a file here, and I'm going to call it posts.tsx. No, I'm going to call it posts.ts because it's not going to have any JSX in it. And I'm going to do that thing where you have to go to the next docs, and I'm going to go to the API routes. In fact, maybe it's here. Here it is, look. So Next also provides a quick and easy way to do API routing. I like to run Lambda functions to have them as part of your project. And Next, wherever Next runs, these will run effectively. Once Next is working, this will run too. So what's this? This is a pages/API/posts. So if I go to /API/posts now, what do I see? I see a JSON output of John Doe. Interesting. So what this is effectively very similar to an Express server running in a Lambda function. You can do whatever you want in here, make data fetching requests, and then you can call them from your Next app. They just work. So that's kind of cool, right? We can just return stuff here. So what about if we could call a database from here? If we called a database here, we could go and get some data, return that to our client app, and then, oh, we could build the whole API just here, couldn't we? We don't really, like, you may not want to do this for huge commercial projects that need to rapidly scale, but then on another hand, you might, because all of these can run in Lambda functions, so they're very scalable. And actually, what you connect up to out in here needs to worry about the load. So you'd need to worry that your database could handle it and was distributed and load balanced in whatever way necessary. But your front end and your API can just run in Lambdas. Interesting. So what can we do with that? And how could we maybe get data in this function? And that's where Prisma comes in. So we've got Prisma running over here. How does it work? This looks interesting. So we can just create an object. We can then get some objects, and it just makes them in a database. Okay, let's go and see how this works. Let's go to the quick start. Where's the quick start? In fact, we don't want the quick start. We want add it to an existing project. So I'm going to flip back over here. I'm going to stop the process. I'm going to check. I'm going to init a Git repository for now, just so that we can. What's that? Yes, I would like to add node modules to gitignore. Okay, I don't know what your problem is there, but whatever. Let's also add the next directory to that. Okay. Now let's check. All right. Just do that for now. Oh, I'm going to change this to main while I'm here, because just a quick tip, if you need to change from master to main, the time to do it is at the beginning, because the first branch you push up to GitHub becomes your default branch. So if you do it right now, done. Never have to think about it again. So there we go. We've got our Git repo, we've got our initial commit of what we've just done, and now we can start adding some Prisma stuff. So what do we need? npm install Prisma CLI save dev. All right, that's easy enough. It doesn't look like it's copying though. Weird. Okay, it was copying. So let's install Prisma. So then we're going to npx Prisma init. Sounds good. And that's going to start us up with Prisma. Cool. Look at that. So let's have a look in the environment file. So this is the database URL for the connection to the database. I'm going to comment this out for now, and I'm going to replace it with a SQLite database file. I think that's, I need 2 slashes. I think that'll do the trick. We've now got a schema.prisma file. I'm going to change that quickly to SQLite for now, just because we're going to do it locally, and we'll worry about switching to Postgres when we deploy, which might be today, although looking at the time, might not be. Alex just started. So it would always be fresh on load with get server-side props. Yes, it would, but the downside of that is you then have to serve every request. The cool thing about get static props and using that, if you can, is you just have static HTML. And then I didn't mention it, but the incremental static generation is kind of the in-between of both worlds. So it will serve up static HTML and then call the data fetching function again. And if the data's changed, it'll update the HTML file so the next person who comes gets the up-to-date data. So your request is always perhaps one behind, but you can set it to say only update this once every 5 seconds, and then you make sure that your database only ever gets called once every 5 seconds. So it's like an intermediate step, which is actually kind of cool. Perhaps we'll go over some of that with the app later, because it might be that it's useful to have a home page that's current and has all the latest stuff, but doesn't. But it, if it gets thousands of visits every second, you don't want to server render it, because then you've got to have a database that can handle thousands of requests a second. If you use the incremental static generation, you can have a home page that's up to date within the last 5 seconds, but is still served to those thousands of people as a static HTML file, which is pretty sweet, if you ask me. We'll hopefully get into some of that later on. Right, so this is the basic schema for this is the basic setup you need for a Prisma project. It doesn't actually do anything yet. If I run Prisma, I ran Prisma init. So we ran Prisma init, and what that created was an environment file where we could put our connection string, and a schema.prisma file, which is basically where we say you're going to use this database, you're going to use this database URL, and then you're going to run this generator, which is the Prisma client generator. What does that mean? Don't know. So what do we put in this schema file? So is it eponymous? I don't know. The canonical example, one of those 2 words perhaps, of a database schema demonstration is to do a post, right? So how would you make a post model? You do it like this. Let's go and have a look at the syntax we need, because I can't remember off the top of my head. Okay, down here, look. So this is how we do it. So we have we have a default auto increment, and we'll mark it as an ID. So the object has an ID, it will be an integer. default defines a value for this field, so we're going to set it as an auto incrementing value, and it's going to be an index. So I just saved that and it put the index at the beginning, reorganized it compared to the docs, but we won't argue. I'm going to copy and paste the created at because I don't want to type that out. Okay, so a post will have a title, which will be a string. It'll have maybe a body, which will be a string of HTML maybe. We can change that later. Okay, I mean that's enough to get started. We will add in users and set up relationships and stuff as well. Actually, let's just quickly do that now. Let's copy this user model for demonstration purposes. And oh my goodness, look at that. They put the numbers in the copy and paste. That's crazy. Get rid of the profile, do that. Now watch this. This is cool. I'm going to close, oops, wrong way. Watch this. So I've got a user with an ID, email, name, and post. I'm going to change that to lowercase and change it to plural because it's actually posts, an array of posts. When I press save now, watch what happens to this four. There's 4 fields on post. I'm going to press save. It just set up the relationship for me. Done. What? Yeah, it just did it automatically. Clever stuff. So I'll just rename that, make it lowercase for consistency. Is that prettier tidying up the schema file? It is, but it's also, there's a extension. Where is it? Prisma. So this does it as well, I think. I'm not sure if this does, yeah, this does code formatting. Tidies it up, does all the spacing nicely, and then infers the relationships, which is just blows my mind every time I see it. Like I can delete that post off there, delete the user stuff off there, and then come up here and just go, yeah, so a user has an array of posts, and just say, I want a post array on the flag posts, hit save, it goes, there you go then, there's the relationship all set up. I'm like, what? No, don't even have to think about it, it's genius. Is it VS Code only? I don't know. I only use it in VS Code, but there may be, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see a version for IntelliJ family products. Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see it for other IDEs. So that's kind of fun. I like that. What does that get us? So we can. There's 2 options here actually. Because what Prisma will also do is if I had an existing database, I can go and look at the database, figure out the model, and build me this file, make this for me. Or I can write the model and generate the client and push it into the database. It works both ways. So if I write the model first, I can push it into the database, get the schema working in the database, and then if I'm in the database looking at it and I think, oh, actually, I want to change that, I can change it just in the database software and then run introspect and it'll go, oh, you've changed your model in the database, and update the model accordingly. It's nuts. Now, it wasn't very good last year, but over the last year or so, or the last 6 months, it's just got really good, and it's just, yeah, it saves a lot of time. It's really good fun. Anyway, moving on before we run out of time. That cup is cold, so we're over halfway now. Excuse the squeaks. Let's see if my bottle is as good as keeping things hot as it is as keeping things cold. At keeping things cold, I should say. Oh, it looks good. And how you can look, something can look hot. It wasn't steaming, but it did look. What is that? Can you visually identify the temperature of a fluid? I can't remember. Did we do that in physics once? I don't know. All right, moving on. Okay, so we're at the point now where we've got a basic model and we've got our environment file, which should connect us to a local SQLite database file. How do we make it work? Watch this. So npx Prisma generate is the first one I'm going to run. That's going to create our type safe database client, which is also really cool and Excited to show you in a minute. Installing. Alright, so let's quickly just have a look at what this did. So I just ran npx prisma generate. So this is a prisma generate command. It's loaded in my variables from the environment file and loaded the schema that we were just playing with. And then it does a cool thing. So this @prisma client is a node module that gets installed when you run these commands. But until we run this generate file, it's an empty project. It doesn't have any code. But when we run generate, it populates the node module's Prisma. Is it @prisma? I think it's @prisma. Here. It populates the client. So this would have been empty if I'd showed you it a minute ago. We ran generate and it's now made this node module have code in it based on what our schema said. It was a bit weird. It took me a while to kind of understand what was going on there in the beginning, but that's basically what it's doing. It installs an empty project, you define your schema, and then you generate your client, and it goes, okay, cool, now you've got a normal node module in your project that has all of your types, schemas and stuff. It's kind of cool. So I haven't explained it well, but hopefully over the next few minutes you'll see what I mean. So now we should be able to use the client. There's one more thing we need to do, which is to run a migrate on our database. So let's try that quickly. So these are the migrate commands. This is similar to something like you'd use these commands in PHP Artisan for doing your migrations in Laravel, for example. Similar idea. So we want to migrate up, and it's experimental at the moment, so they make you explicit. If I leave that off, it's like, sorry, you need to please provide the experimental flag. So okay, we'll diligently provide the experimental flag just to confirm that we understand that it's not finished yet. And we'll run that. What's that going to do? You're trying to apply a migration for SQLite database undefined. Ooh, a database with that name doesn't exist. Would you like to create it? Yes, I would. Oh no, straight into a panic. Error querying the database, unable to open database, SQLite the database. Okay, this I guess is because I have defined the URL to the file system incorrectly. Does it need to be like that, perhaps? Let's try that again. Boom, there you go. So it needs to know where it is, and it's not a protocol, although it looks like one. I don't know. Details. So what did that do? Look, we've now got a SQLite.db file we can't open in VS Code, but that we can open in some other app. So I'm going to open this in Table Plus real quick. Ooh, look, we've got a migrations list. We don't have any migrations though. We just modified our model to add a user and a post, but then we tried to migrate up our database, and it said there isn't any migrations. That's because we didn't actually save the migration. So we're going to call the migration add user and post just to get started, and then look what that did. Cool, new data model. This is your Prisma schema file. Boom. We've just created you a migration. So let's put the date and given it the title. Where's that? Let's go and have a look. In our migrations file, we've got a dated folder here. We've got this README file. This migration has been generated at this time on this day. These are the steps, and look, here's the SQL that it's going to use to create the tables. Set up the index that we defined with our @ID in our Prisma schema, and this is the diff. And because we added the whole thing, it's all in there. That's kind of cool, right? Cool. All right. So what happens if we now run up? Oh, look. It ran the migration to create table statements. Done, rocket ship. Nice. So let's flip back to Table Plus. Hey, look, there's our tables. Awesome. So we've got an ID, an email, and a name on the user, and we've got an ID created at title, body, and user ID on the post. How cool is that? So what other fields might we want to have on a post? I don't know. maybe we want to add something to the user, like a biography. There we go. Let's quickly do that. So we want to modify our schema. We want to add a bio, which is just a big string, and it's optional. Oops, don't need the colon. To the user. Okay, so I've just added a new field, an optional field to the user. Now we're going to have to go through that process again. Go away. Alerts. So we'll npx run Prisma save to save that modification. And what did we do? We added bio field. That's just to user. So it's done the same thing, created that migration. And you'll see that this bio string is slightly different. So when we run up again, it's going to run that migration as well. And bio string is different. We've now got another migration over here. And this one is going to say, look. I don't know what changed about that. That didn't change. Weird. But look, the important thing is here. It's like, okay, look, yeah, we've noticed that you added the bio string field. You ran the migration. So if we come over here, there's bio. Sweet. Okay, it's all automatic. What about if I want to remove that again? What if I'm like, oh, actually, I didn't want that. That was a mistake. Delete that, save it, back to the terminal, run those two commands again, save the change, actually remove bio on user. It's done that. Let's run up again, run the migrations. Oh, it's gone. Sweet. Now, if there were data there that it was going to delete, it would probably prompt us then and ask us to make a decision. It's like, this will destroy some data. Would you like to continue? But in this case, because we didn't have any data in there, it was fine. It just went, yeah, sure, I can modify that however you want. So you can see how powerful this is. Like, you just literally define your schema in here, run a couple of commands, database reflects your changes. Genius. When you've got different environments, run all of this in test. Once your schema is correct, you've got your migrations, deploy to production, run your migrations, your production database is updated as well. As long as you don't make any data loss changes, it should just be fine. So that's kind of cool. So how do we use this in the next project? So how are we doing for time? 9:20. We've got time. So that's the basics of Prisma. Let's see how we might use it. I'm going to just collapse all of these so that's a bit more sensible, and get that down, close that, and close all, oops, don't leave that broken. Close all the windows. Cool. So in our pages, in our API folder, we've got this posts function. That's kind of cool. What happens if we follow the instructions that it gave us way up here before 2 or 3 migrations here? You can now start using Prisma Client in your code. Okay, let's copy this then. Close that, paste that in here. We don't want that one. Now this app Prisma client library is generated. It's what we generated when we ran our Prisma commands. Super Jazz, writing migrations like some kind of Neanderthal. Well, it's a trade-off, isn't it? Like, I think they do provide all of this stuff because you might need to modify it. It's not perfect, and it does get things wrong at times. But they are making it better very quickly. All right, so we've got an API function here. Prisma is our client, and what's this? Our Prisma client has a post and a user on it. That's kind of cool. So how does that work? So say I wanted to create a post. What do I do there? Post. Oh, okay, here's all the functions on the post. What about if I want to create one? Is that a function? Yes. Okay, here's how to use it. Cool. So I pass it some data for the post. Okay, so let's see let's add some data. What fields can we add? Okay, we can need a body and a title, but the other two are optional. So let's add a title of my post title and a body of this is my amazing post. Save that. Let's await that, shall we? Because it's async. That means we need to make this async. In fact, I'm going to make this not lambda because I like to name my functions. Let's name it getPosts. All right, so what's going to happen when we run this, do you think? It's going to create a post? Seems too easy, doesn't it? Are you going to create a post in the database? What? Hang on, let's just make sure we're not cheating. All right, it's empty. And then we'll go over here and we'll hit refresh. Oh, we're not running the dev server. You need to run the dev server or it won't work. NRD is just a shortcut for npm run dev. In fact, I shouldn't really use my, there you go, npm run dev. Now I can refresh. And we should see John Doe as the output still. Cool. Page settings, block loading, resource at local. It's fav icon. Okay, that's just complaining about we haven't got a fav icon. Okay, cool. So that ran seemingly without issue. Does that mean we've got a post over here? Oh yeah, it does. Look, how cool is that? We've got a post. No way. All right, let's modify that to my second post title, and this is my second amazing post. And hit refresh, run that again. Do we get another one? We do. Oh, how cool is that? Nice. Awesome. All right, so we've got a couple of posts. I'm going to add one more for good measure. So we can make a list of them. Let's see where this is going, can't you? So there's no third item. Go back here, hit refresh to run the posts function. Go back to the database. There it is. Game on. How cool is that? Sweet. So it's too easy. All right, so we'll leave that there in case we want it for making some more posts in a minute before we set up a create post endpoint. And we are going to get rid of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to say posts is equal to prisma.post.findMany, I guess. And then we're going to return posts. Is that going to work? Seems too easy as well. No, it doesn't work. What's the error? Maybe I need some arguments in here. No, I think that should work. Let's check the Prisma docs though. Where's queries? I was going to make some notes about all this stuff. Decided not to, because that's what the docs are for. Prisma posts at find many. So, can we? No? Yes, we can. Research. Yes. Okay, let's have a look. You're going to show me how to use it, or just the type defs? Maybe we just need an empty object in there. In fact, I think that might be what we need. Boom, 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 boom. Nope. Okay, let's try querying it then. Where title contains post, because they all do. Now it has to return. Oh, I'm not awaiting it. Silly me. Yeah. Oh yeah, Alex spotted it. Thanks, dude. There we go. So it is too easy. See what I mean? Like, maybe we don't need that. We can get rid of all of that. And yeah, we just get the post, just find many. Do we need the empty object? Probably not. No. Okay, so there we go. We've got database stuff going on. One line. Like, obviously you'd probably want to add some error handling to this. Catch any errors and return error codes and things like that. But for just getting stuff working for test purposes, this is so easy. So easy, I say it in a silly high-pitched voice. And this is the thing, like a lot of this stuff feels akin to the kind of simplicity of learning PHP and MySQL when I first started out back in the day. Like, I find a lot of people, especially those getting on in years like myself, who've all got a book that we started out with at some point. It was like, learn the basics of PHP and MySQL, and it basically taught you how to do an index.php file, connect to a database, get some data out, and then immediately echo it out as HTML, right? And lots of apps in the world still work like that. Next feels like it provides that same sort of flexibility, but still lets you separate stuff out so that your data fetching code isn't in your HTML. Although, of course, the component model blurs those lines a little bit, right? All right, so that's kind of nifty. How cool is that? we've got a list of posts coming out. Neat. All right. So we've got about half an hour left. Oh wait, no. I thought we started at 8. We started at 7:30. We've got an hour left. We've got loads of time. Loads of time. Although I am going to run out of coffee, which is a concern. But that's okay. All right. So we've got our basic data fetching endpoint that connects to our database. Wasn't sure whether to tell you that or not. What, the await thing? Yeah. I think I did figure it out reasonably quickly, but I still miss those sorts of things a lot. Easy oversight. Oh, the 8:30 thing. The 8:30 thing. Fine. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was 8 o'clock. Maybe because I was like, I need to be at my desk by 8 o'clock, otherwise I might be late. Cool, well, I thought we had half an hour left. We've got an hour left. We've got loads of time. We can probably get this thing going, and well, we might even have time to get it up on Vercel at this rate. Cool, so where are we up to? We've got an index page, and it just returns static content of good dog for now. So how would we get that data out of the API route and into our component? We need to call that API route here somehow, don't we? I guess. Do we need to do that? Would we do it in our component? Now this is where it starts to get into how we want the data fetched, because we could do an effect in here and get the data and just render it out when the component renders, or we could get the data static build time, or maybe we want the data at server runtime. All depends on what we're doing really, and what we want, and the context that we're working in, how real time the data needs to be, how worried we are about load, the amount of visits we're likely to get on this project. So there's not often a single solution, but it seems sensible, if you can, to use the get static props option whenever possible, because it significantly reduces your infrastructure's responsibility. There's a lot of ways we can get data, basically, is what I'm getting at. We might use an effect here, just to run a query when the client runs, and that's good for a lot of apps. But if we want it search engine indexed, we might want to consider get static props. I realise I just said the same thing about 5 times. It's because I'm kind of wondering in my head whether to do a basic fetch example first, or whether to go straight to React Query. But perhaps a good thing is to do a demo of all the work involved in doing a basic fetch query with use effect, right? So put that at the top, so it's better at the top. Feels better at the top. So how might we fetch data? Like when this is the sort of thing you're going to have to do, the dance that you're going to do. You're going to be like, okay, data, set data is use state of undefined or something. We haven't got use state imported, so let's get that imported. And then we might do fetch here, and we might call, let's just hard code it for now, localhost 3000 API posts. And we'll await that fetch, and we'll do that, res, and then the data will be the JSON response. This needs to be async, so then we're like, oh, okay, we need to then define a function in here called get data or something that's async, like that, and then we can set data with data. But then we need to handle errors, and we need to muck about with a whole bunch of stuff, and then we'll call get data here. Okay, so then hopefully by the time we get down here, we'll have some data. So now if we load up homepage, I'm guessing, I didn't really look, but we should have our posts. Oh no, again, need to await this. So now we've got our posts coming out client side. Cool. But this is a bit of a this is a bit of a monstrosity and it's a bit of a pain in the arse, and it doesn't handle any errors, and it just doesn't, yeah, you end up writing this 100 times to do data fetching in a React app, unless you come up with a kind of abstraction, a shared way of doing things, and it gets a bit annoying. You know, you'll end up needing a error, set error in case you get errors, and then you end up needing is loading, set loading, all this stuff, like, and it's just like, it gets really tedious. And you still don't cover every use case, and then something happens you don't expect, and it's like, yeah, fine, okay. So ideally, we don't want to be mucking about with that every time. We want to write some kind of abstraction. So we might write a custom hook with useEffect in that does all that stuff, or we might use this lovely new tool called React Query. Now, React Query, always end up here. React Query is similar to Vercel's SWR static while. Yeah, bring on the suspense, which we will look at when we get into Blitz, because Blitz comes with suspense enabled by default, which is cool, really cool. But also, React Query saves us a lot of that pain too. So, oh look, we literally arrived while a build is happening. How exciting. React Query is very similar to Vercel's SWR library, which stands for stale while revalidate. And that ties in a bit to the static regeneration stuff that they do. It's all based on a similar idea, which is that, hang on, we can serve up stale content to get a fast response in a lot of cases where actually up to the second data doesn't matter. As long as it's relatively current, you can save yourself a lot of pain by pre-rendering or doing static regeneration. Now, React Query solves a lot of the problems with doing the data fetching, and the reason I use React Query now instead of SWR is React Query's server rendering support is significantly better. We might get into some of that later, we'll see. So the first thing we're going to do, as with every save dev React Query, that'll get us React Query. Interestingly, React Query has been rewritten with TypeScript, although originally it wasn't TypeScript, and I didn't think Tanner was going to rewrite it. He did. I'm very happy about that. Let's go back and check the docs and get started and check out the basic example. So this query cache stuff, I think we can get away with not setting up straight away. All we need is this use query thing down here. So let's try it out. I'm going to pop this over on the left. Pull this up on the right, hide that, go to the top so you can see it all, get rid of the React effects stuff, and right. So how do we do this? Is loading, that's handy, error, that's handy, and data, all come from the same hook, and we'll use query, which we haven't imported yet, but we will shortly, and we'll call it posts because we're going to get our posts, and then we will need a function, which I'm just going to define here now, called getPosts, which is basically going to fetch whatever we pass in. So we're going to fetch localhost. We'll just hardcode this for now. Posts like this. This is an async. And then we need to return await res.json again. So similar sort of thing. That's our definition function. We could add all sorts of stuff to this if we wanted. We could set headers on the fetch. We could add auth tokens and things like that in here. We could obviously make getPosts call a call API function that sets all of that stuff up for us. But the way React Query works is it expects an async function that returns your data, basically. So now let's import use query from React Query. If I can type, this would all be a lot faster if I could type. All right, so now if I console log query data Is that going to work? Surely not. It's too simple, right? Let's flick back to Firefox. Oh, we need to run the dev server again. npm run dev. Hit refresh. Oh no, query data is undefined. Let's see. What did I do wrong? No port on here. And now I refresh. Aha, there it is. So interestingly, if I remove that port again, making the API request fail, and refresh, the data will be undefined. That's annoying. What about the error handling though? What if I log out that error? What does that get me? And I should be using the debugger here really, because console logging. Oh no, the error's null. So actually that's not great. That's because my endpoint doesn't. Oh no, it's because there's no error handling or anything. This is just failing. And yeah, we won't worry about that for now. Anyway, the reason it wasn't working is because the port was gone. It's getting appropriately epic. Okay, good, good. Let's see what it is. Derelict by abstraction on 13 is my favorite prime number. My favorite prime. There you go. You get great stuff on some of these stations. All right, cool. All right, we'll ignore the fact that the error reporting didn't work there. And this means we can now log out our posts. Now, I'm assuming we can define our return type in here. We do it like that. If I get post imported from Prisma, perhaps. And then I'm going to get rid of, no, I'm not going to do it underneath. I'm going to add a list of thingamies. List of posts. So data, map, post, post dot title, right? And notice that hopefully the type definitions are there. Yes. That means that the use query type is working, I think. And there's our posts coming out of the database. Cool. So if I go and modify this, modified, and I'm going to save that. Now watch what happens when I flip back to the browser. Ready for this? I've just changed the title to be my third post title modified. When I click this window, boom, there it is. I didn't refresh. It's just there. Done. Magic. Let me do it again. I'm going to change it back. Change it to unmodified, even though that's a lie. Do that. Save it in the database. And then I'm going to flip back to the client and... oh, just updated. How did it do that? It's cool, isn't it? So in the background, if we watch the network tab, some of the defaults that React Query and SWR indeed come with is to provide some defaults that try and make your app feel more real-time. So we were talking about how you might load a page and get slightly old data. And what happens if you come back to that page, you're still on that old data, but React Query will actually detect that return to the browser. So you might have gone away for 5 seconds, you might have gone away for 5 hours. As soon as you flip back, it detects the focus back on the app and immediately does another query to check if there's any updates to the posts. So because I'm running locally, you can see that happens in a split second. Like if I change this to modded, hit save in the database and flip back, it's instant because that request just happens in no time at all. But it actually ends up working really well, and you can see how when that's running in production, you end up not... It raises questions about when you need WebSockets and when you don't, things like that, for example. Because if I come back here and within, you know, half a second, everything's updated and something that would have come in over a WebSocket has appeared to me, what's the difference? Did I need that WebSocket? Obviously, with scale, polling too many requests on the API, probably bad thing. You might want to look at WebSockets then, but the thing about that is you can't stick a WebSocket in a Lambda, whereas the Lambdas can just run 1,000 times with a cached data on the back end, and game on. So it really helps in a serverless context where you don't want to be running a long-running socket server that might crash and drop all your connections and everyone's got to reconnect and it gets so messy. Whereas with this, it's all per request. You make a request, if that fails, well, it'll try again, and then it does exponential back off. If you hit an error, it'll go, oh, I'll try again in a minute, and then it'll try again. And if that also fails, it'll go, okay, I'll wait a bit longer and try again a little later. So you can see the example we had before with the use effect stuff was going to be messy, and it didn't handle errors, it didn't handle the loading state. We would have needed a bunch more state variables or a reducer or something else to manage all of that stuff. But React Query just does it for us, and also deals with handling all of the other stuff, plus adds the caching on top. And it also does lots of other cool things, which I'll show you when we deploy this. In fact, maybe that's what we should do now. We've got an app. So let's do a quick review of what we've done over the last just over an hour. So we've got a 2-page app that can do static page generation that will render out our posts that it gets from a schema we've defined in the database, and queries via an API route we've defined as a Next API page, basically. So you can see there's not a great deal of code. Like with these 3 libraries and just a few lines in each file, we've got the makings of an application, haven't we? Well, apparently we haven't. Why has that failed? Data's undefined, is it? Okay. Simple solution for now is just to do that. There we go. So you can see there's a brief loading there on the first load. When I refresh, you can see it kind of flicker. If I go to page 2, back to page 1, there's no flicker. And that's the other cool thing that it does. It's cached this. So once we've loaded it once, it is always there immediately. We can navigate immediately. It's already saved in our local cache, handled by React Query. We don't even have to think about it. And in the background, it does another request just in case something changed. So if I go to page 2, go back to the database again, just to really hammer this home, delete that modded bit, save it in the database, and then click Go Home, it will instantly load without a loading spinner, and then do an update in the background and update to the latest content. You've probably seen this at work on Twitter, when you go back to Twitter and you see a really interesting tweet that you would like to read, and then it vanishes and new stuff's there, and you're like, oh, come on, like I was gonna read that. This is the same kind of idea, and you get it almost for free out of the box with just this one line. Basically, that's it to get your data fetching handled. React Query also does some stuff that can hook up a cache, so that if we do a get static rendered page or a get server props rendered page, it can build that cache and provide that cache to the client, so that after that initial render, the cache is already always there and then can be picked up and start to be updated in real time by React Query. Oh, and there's one other really cool thing that I'm going to show you before we move on to trying to deploy this thing, and that is the React Query DevTools. The one thing that we really liked about Redux was the Redux DevTools, being able to time travel back and forward in time, and also to be able to see a state of all the data in the application. What I realized was that 9 times out of 10, the state I cared about was the API state, not the global state that was actually a mistake, arguably, in most cases. Redux global state for a lot of stuff actually doesn't make that much sense, but it does make sense for global data storage. And moving to something like React Query, I was a little bit upset about losing the Redux DevTools, but no, never fear, because Tanner Lindsley to the rescue. This kind of blew my mind the other day. So I'm going to npm install save dev React Query DevTools, and then I'm going to grab this line here, and I'm going to try it in here. See if we can get away with it. We might have to put this at at the top level, but we'll see. I really want to help these docs out and make it so that these are in a pseudo block so they don't copy the numbers. That's so annoying. Oh, Alex, can you hook into it and not update the UI traditionally? Presenter mode also suggests they should refresh. You can, yeah. You can turn off the automatic stuff. I don't know if you could hook into an event on it. Maybe. Be worth looking into potentially, yeah. I mean, I guess the ideal in that case would be like, yeah, to show you where you're at and then put a thing at the top that says there's new posts. Click here to show the new posts. And maybe we could already have loaded them and just not move the UI, keep the UI where it is and put stuff in above so you can scroll up and get the new stuff. I don't know. Yeah, we could do all sorts of stuff with it. I think we could wrap this in our own thing and then track changes to data, and I don't know. To have a think about it. It's a good question. Because it is annoying when that happens on Twitter. Really, 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 really annoying. But there we are. Okay, so DevTools. Let's see if these work. Because they're kind of cool. It might not work because we needed the top. Oh no, yeah, it works fine. Cool. So let's hide the browser stuff. So check this out. It's just added a little component here. It's just got this little overlay down here. If I click this, and look, here's my posts. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, so this is the post, the key for it. Oh look, here's the data that came back from the API. That's kind of cool. Oh, cool. And then, oh, we can actually manually trigger a refetch, or we can remove it from the records and then go to page 2 and go back to page 1. Oh, there's our post again. We could call it twice. So we could call it post 2, just give it a key, and then I'll get rid of those two because we're not using them, and rename that to data 2 so they don't conflict. And then we see it calls post 2 as well, post 1 and post 2. They're the same, obviously. But you can imagine how this can be really useful for debugging all sorts of things in your app. Now, what's also really cool about React Query is if you set up the query cache stuff, which we didn't do, but it's basically just a provider that wraps the app. You can use these use query hooks in any component. You could go 10 components down the tree, and if it needs the data from this get posts function, I can call this again, exactly the same, and React Query is smart enough to collapse those requests into a single request. If they happen in one render cycle, it'll go, oh, you've called this in all the places you need that data. It'll consolidate them into one and only call the API once, and then make that data available to every child component in the tree that needs it. And it's doing some pretty clever stuff under the hood to kind of consolidate those into one query, but make sure everything gets the correct data that it needs. But that's pretty powerful. You can't do that with a lot of stuff because SWR, for example, if I want to provide it with an initial data from a server render, it makes some other stuff really hard to do. And you end up getting flashes of undefined content when navigating around and all sorts of stuff. Whereas React Query with its cache provider that sits at the top level of the app just means you can grab that data from anywhere just by querying it basically with a function that does the thing you need. And it dedupes, which is damn cool. So yeah, that's the React Query DevTools, which is awesome, and means that I'm not concerned about giving up the Redux experience anymore, because majority of the time what I was checking in the Redux DevTools was network data, and network data shouldn't be in Redux. It's not the right tool for the job, really. Anyway, I digress. Good dog. So now we've done that, what should we do next? How are we doing for time? We've got about 40 minutes left. Get rid of the hello world good dog now. We've got a list of titles. Let's see. We could do page 2 and go and get the data from a get static paths thing, but maybe it would be cool to, we've got effectively our walking skeleton, and we've got our skeleton of what an app would be. Maybe I should show you why I use Vercel for deployments quickly. So let me see. Oh look, we need to add ds store to our gitignore file. I'm just going to call this demo Prisma and React query. Okay. That's committed, no problemo. And in my Safari, I should be able to just go here and create a new repo. We'll call it nordev next, and might as well just leave it public, I guess. We won't do any of that. We'll create a repo. I'm going to add the remote origin down here, and then I'm going to push. All right, and that's pushed everything up. If I refresh here, we should see our code. Cool. And the next thing I'm going to do is open Vercel. I might just do this off screen so I don't give away everything, including all my work stuff. I'll be right back. Okay, so I just clicked on import project. I'm going to import a Git repository. Oh, I thought it used to automatically connect, but I guess not. Where's that repo we just made? Here we go. Paste that in there. Nordev next, it's picked up its next project. These will be all fine. We'll go and set up the environment variables in a second. Okay, that's off deploying. Fun times. Do I have a build command? I do. I might need a start command though. We'll see if it's clever enough to start it by itself. So there we can see it generated the Prisma schema. It's probably using SQLite still. We're going to need to fix that. So I'm going to head over and create a DigitalOcean database real quick. I'm just going to do the same thing over here so I don't... Oh, it logged me out. DigitalOcean logs me out a lot. Just going to put in my password over here. Probably a good thing that it logs me out, right? I don't want people just getting access to all my servers. NDT. All right. So I was mucking about with the app stuff last night. So I'll just delete that right now before I create another one so I don't end up with 10 databases in there. I want a database, please. Create a database cluster. We use Postgres and we're going to put it in London because it's nearby. I'm going to call it db nordev test, ndt nordev test, create database cluster. It's probably going to take longer than the deploy. I should have done this first. But not to worry, we've got time. All right, so that's going to build us a little database and then we'll get the connection stuff here. Cool, so that'll allow us to go and build our... Congratulations, your project has been successfully deployed. Let's click visit and see if it worked. Page 2. Go home. Page 2, go home. Cool, so our basic nav works. Oops. In the same way, it's just not zoomed in, that's why it's smaller. So that's deployed now to nordev-next.vercel.app. You can go and visit that in your browser if you like. Whilst we wait for the database to spin up, I'm going to go back to our .env file over here. I'm going to comment out that for now. And then in here, I'm going to do everything but I'm just going to use the default info for now. I'm not going to bother setting up a user and stuff because it'll take too long. I'll put in the real password off screen. But I'll just copy the rest of this so you can see how the setup stuff works. So localhost will be the connection domain and the port is 25060. Okay, and the database name is defaultdb. We just keep to the defaults now because I'm probably going to delete this after the stream. So, all right, that should work. Now this database URL I'm going to copy, and I'm going to just drag this off screen, and I'm going to put the password in without you seeing it, so you can't fuck with me. Excuse my language. Because as lovely as you are for watching along today, I don't doubt some of you would relish the chance to confuse me by messing with my database data. Alright, so I've got the Postgres SQL connection string in my clipboard. I'm going to close that now, and I'm going to run this locally with, in fact I'm going to run npx Prisma up experimental against that new database. What is it I want? Prisma generate experimental. No, what is it? Migrate. Silly me. Migrate up experimental. There we go. Oh no, error in our file. SQLite, and we are using Postgres now. So go back here. Oh, schema. So now it's Postgres SQL, and we're going to need to commit that as well. But let's see if it works first. Migrate up experimental. With a bit of luck, that should be modifying our Postgres database in the cloud, although it won't be because it's probably not spun up just yet. Let me hide that password. Bring this back in. Let's see. Where are we at? I know. Okay, looks like we're good to go. Did that run then? Why you no run? Table plus. Let's see if I can add a connection in. Same drill, just moving it off. Oh no, did that anyway. Right, creating a new Postgres connection here. And I'm going to copy and paste all of these things. Oops. Let's just see if we can get an error message or something out of this. Username, password. Oh, I'll put the password in last. I don't want to show you that because you might type it in. Alright, I'm just going to take this off and do the password quickly. Sorry if this bit's a bit boring. Save. Connecting. No, it doesn't connect. Alright. Da 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 da. Is it booted up yet? Who else had PG admin ready for the slip? No, you don't. Oh, fuck, you do. No, you don't. Excuse my language again. Forgive me. Do you have the password? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, because I brought it back and then I refreshed and it reset it. Yep, you're right. All right. Why can't I connect? It's probably SSL mode, isn't it? Dun, dun, da, 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 da. Allow required test. It's always this bit. Logged in and changed the nice one. Default DB, maybe I need to put in the default DB. It's always this bit that's annoying, isn't it? What a pain. Oh, the port. I didn't put the port in, that's why. Or at least not in my local connection, I didn't. Node test, connect, later, close that, close that, close that. Too many windows. The trial version. Do admin does not exist. The username they have given me apparently does not exist. Thanks, DigitalOcean. Really helping me out here. Hey Hamza, welcome to the stream. Alex is trolling me at the present time. So do admin is our user, default DB is our database. Why no work? Hey, we're good, we're in the game. All right, let me see. Okay, look. Now we're connected to the real Postgres on DigitalOcean. Alex has let us. He's stopped messing with us. Right. So I was trying to run the migrations on that. It was because it couldn't connect. So let's try that again. Now the server definitely works. Boom, there we go. Looks like DigitalOcean was just taking its time to make things accessible. How you doing, Hamza? What time is it over there? What was it? 5? I guess it's mid-afternoon for you. I guess maybe this works a bit better as a time for you, assuming you're not working. Okay, cool. So now in our cloud DigitalOcean database, there's our posts and users all up and running. Game on. So now I need to go and copy my connection string again, because I think I probably copied something else in the meantime. So I'm just going to go over there and grab that. All right, close that so you're not stealing the password. And now I can do the last bit, which is in the Vercel dashboard, wherever that is. Okay, so we visited, we're now going to open the dashboard. Let's make this full size, zoom in a bit so you can actually see what's happening. 2 PM, good time to join, yeah, great. Great, if this works for people, we might do the same thing next time, but we'll see what people think. I'm less busy next week, hopefully. Okay, so this is our basic Vercel deployment. An unexpected error has apparently occurred. Although, actually, looks fine to me. Alright, so we have the deployment list. So far only the one initial deployment we made. And settings, where actually, because it's Next, we don't really need to modify these, but we could modify the port, we could have a custom build command if we wanted to run some other stuff before doing the build or whatever. But what's cool is we can configure these on the command line as well, but for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to add these in. So that's our production. I'm going to use the same database for preview and production for now, and development in fact. We can change this when we need more environments in future. This just ensures that our pull request versions and production will use the same database whilst we're doing demos. So that's our database connection set up, hopefully. I should be able to come back here. And I've got some changes I need to commit. So if the .env shouldn't be in. In git, should it? Add.git ignore, git remove Prisma /.env. Does that not work? No. Oh, I actually deleted it. I'm an idiot. But that's okay, because we can, how do you, Vercel pull config. Preview environment is effectively a staging environment. When, I'll show you in a second, when we do a deployment to a branch or a pull request, Vercel will deploy a version of the app at that commit on that branch and generate a URL for it. So those preview examples, in most cases, I'll use a test server. So you can make a code change and try it out in preview at a URL for every pull request and do your updates that way, and then deploy to production and you get your production environment. So preview is effectively, I treat it as staging, but they call it preview because it's for, you can have a million different ones. You don't have just one staging environment. There's 50 previews potentially. What was I looking for? Oh, how to pull down. the Vercel env pull. Here we go. Because I just pasted the, here it is. Oh. Okay, oops, Vercel link. Yeah. Linked, nice. Okay, now I can do Vercel env pull. And it'll restore my .env file with the database string probably in the wrong place. And I'll pop it there. Ooh, I wonder if that's going to work. I don't know, we'll try it. And then we want to remove that file. That's what that's doing. Move.env, git ignore, add .vercel to the .git ignore. And we made a schema change, which was use Postgres for Prisma. Cool. So I'll push those. Hopefully I'm not just pushing the password with the connection string, but if I am, so be it. Wait, did I not just commit? Or did I already push it out of habit? Oh, I pulled. Idiot. Yeah, I'll show you the preview in a sec, Hamza. It's pretty cool if you haven't seen it. I very much am a fan. Alright, so that over here now should be have triggered another deployment. Let's see, where is it? Here. There it is, now building main. And this here, Hamza, is the preview URL. So if I visit this, it's now generated this. That's a hash, I think, based off the commit in Github. So it's running through the build, waiting for the build to finish. The build has finished. Oh, at least it says it's finished down here. Just finishing up by the looks. And with a bit of luck, all of this will just work. Any developer on the team can pull any env variables, no restrictions. They only pull the environment variables in the development section. So you can't pull production or preview, only development. So it's just a way for a dev to connect up to the project and pull down the settings they need in development, if it's possible to have global ones. But it won't pull down production or preview. These are secret and encrypted. So the only time you see them is when you paste them in, and then they're relatively protected as far as I know. So no, you can't pull in production or preview, and only development, thankfully. It's probably a very good thing. Okay, cool. So that looks like it's ready. And it's because it's the most recent update and it's the main branch, which is our default branch. It deployed this as its branch version and then went, now it's worked, we'll update your production URL to be this latest one as well. So 34-second deployment, it's ready to go. We've got an error. Oh no. I wonder why that keeps erroring out there. Interesting. Because it actually works fine here somehow. All right, so we're connected to our database. So I'm just going to do this the long way, and I'm just going to add these in here. Body, post body, save. And now if I refresh over here, does it hit our database? No. So it looks like there might be a failed connection here. So how do we find out what's going on? We can view the function logs here. Or can we? Ooh. Let's check. Let's check the console here. Oh, silly me. Look at that. Hard-coded localhost 3000. It's not going to work, is it? Silly. Let's fix that, shall we? Close that, close that. We want to look at the index page. Yeah, that's never going to work, is it? Never going to work. Let's just quickly check what I actually want in here, which is window.location.href. Yeah. Just gonna change that. Now this is only going to work client side, but for demonstration now it will work fine. Connect to current server for API recs. push to main. That'll trigger a new deployment. You can see React Query is like, I'm trying to connect, I can't connect. Oh no, it's not actually, that's next. Ignore me, nonsense. Full of nonsense. Okay, so that's deployed. That should have triggered another deployment over here. Boom, 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 there it goes. Let's just check how that's getting on. Okay, cool, nearly done. My coffee is definitely cold now. Yeah, very cold, not very nice. All right, cool. So we're not running locally. We want to be over here in Safari. I don't know why I'm suddenly testing in Safari, but so be it. That's worked, that's deployed, and we've got a screenshot here now. It didn't fail. So let's go and have a look at the main one. Oops. Let's click this big visit button as soon as it arrives. There we go. Why do you need to prepend window.location.href? Because React Query requires a fully qualified URL. So while I could do a relative request with just the fetch API, React Query I think does require, or at least SWR requires a fully qualified URL, I think. And in fact, because I'm using, so actually I think I've done that because SWR requires it, not because React Query requires it. So that's a good question. I don't think it's necessary. It should be possible to just do this. Let's try that locally. Server error. What's going on there? Oh, it's because we've changed. So we're going to have to switch to using Postgres locally, because modifying this every time is going to get tedious. So we'll leave that for now. But yeah, in theory, I don't need to do it. I only need, not with fetch, because it'll do it relative to the current domain, won't it? But in future, when we want to make some of these requests from a server render function, we will then need the fully qualified URL again, because the server won't have access to it won't have a relative to current domain option. We'll need to get the host name or the href, the host from the request object in the server render, and then assemble the URL to call on the server side. So I tend to end up just working with the fully qualified URL at all times, because then React Query can easily dedupe those requests on server and client if they use the same. Well, actually, React Query works with keys, whereas SWR uses the URL as the key, so there are subtle differences, I guess. But that's not going to work locally unless we switch back and change the environment variable back. So we won't worry about that too much for now. So we'll just leave that as is, because that'll work fine. Okay. SWR and React Query are very similar in concept. I used to use SWR, but now I use React Query because it has slightly better support for the server rendering stuff, and the deduplication down the tree is good. Really cool stuff. Okay, so what's happening now? We have our app. Let's visit it. We don't have a post list though. Why do we not have a post list then? Let's see what's happening now. So I'm going to visit that over here just to make sure that's the latest one, and then I'm going to actually go back to Firefox because the dev tools are better. Bad gateway, hey? Interesting. No response from function. Ooh. Okay, what are we actually calling? Where's the headers? That is indeed the case. So let's check the logs. Oh, there it is. URL for data source must start with protocol file. Okay, that's, look at that, it's just spamming, spam a lot. Dangerous. So that's to do with, okay, I'm not going to open the end file on stream again. Look in the end file, it's got Postgres SQL at the beginning. Schema.prisma has Postgres listed, and the database URL should have Postgres at the beginning. So actually, DB, the URL for data source DB must start with the protocol file because it's still got the SQLite version. Why has it still got the SQLite version? Did I push those changes with the schema? Let me close that again. Here's the schema. That's saved. Git status. Git push. Git push. I swear I need to alias git push to git push. That is all up to date. Maybe we're on the wrong deployment then. Deployments 6 minutes ago. Connect to current server for API. So this should be working now. Interesting. That erroring as well? No. Too many tabs now. Right, let's close these. There's too many things here. Too many. Git config global help.autocorrect 20. Oh, does it do that? Nice, I didn't know that. I'm actually going to do that now. Git config global help.autocorrect 20. Ooh, that changed my prompt as well. Or did it? Well, maybe not. Thanks, Alex. Git pish. Nice, yeah, that's cool. Git pish. Cool, thanks. That's really useful. I didn't know that. Right. Why doesn't it work again? So we've got our deployment. It worked fine. We've got our function logs, and they're still failing because it's got the wrong end file. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's go and check the GitHub quickly. Ooh. It's because Prisma wants its end file here, doesn't it? I wonder how we can tell it to look for a directory higher. Because perhaps it's... Let's force it to deploy first. Do it, redeploy it, yes. And hopefully it shouldn't, it's using the wrong end file. Perhaps it can't get the environment variables from the level above. That might be a problem. That might be a problem. We'll see. We'll wait for this, it's queued. Oh, we've got 12 minutes left, so the test is on now. Can we get this working before the end of day 1? And then I've got to go and do some work. And hopefully not too many fires to put out because I haven't been around for 2 hours, but we'll see. It seems that whenever I plan something like this, someone decides it's a good idea to plan every meeting under the sun at the same time. Indeed, sometimes even 2 meetings at once. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since a while. Yeah, exactly. 2 hours ain't gonna make any difference. Okay, deploy. That looks like it went well. Now then, let's go and have a look at definitely this deployment. Hey, it works. Bingo. So you can see now we're loading over the network. And in fact, let me do it in Firefox because the dev tools are better. So we're loading over the network now. If we check the network tab and clear that, and I hit refresh, the page loads, and somewhere in here there's an XHR request to our posts route. Well, there's two because I'm calling it twice. Here it is. How long does it take though? Ooh, 300 milliseconds. That's quite a long time, isn't it? If we go to page 2 and then back to page 1 though, you'll see that post title is there. Let me zoom in so you can actually see. So when we load, there's that initial loading. And in fact, if we added an is loading check, we could say is loading and you'd see it. It'd be like is loading and then posts load when the network request returns. But then when we go to page 2 and come back, it's already there. It doesn't have to load it again. It's cached it, shows it immediately, but then also makes a request in the background in case this has changed. So I can go to page 2, come back to table plus, change this to post title 2, save that, and then flip back here and click home, and we'll see that, and then it'll add 2 as it makes the request again, which is pretty cool. But we're like, 400 milliseconds is quite a long time to retrieve 3 posts, or to retrieve 1 post object, isn't it? Why is it so slow? Is that because we're running in a Lambda somewhere on Vercel, and our database is somewhere in DigitalOcean, London? But Vercel by default deploys to San Francisco, so our requests to our app are going from my computer in the UK over to San Francisco, hitting a Lambda function on Amazon, going back over to the UK, hitting a DigitalOcean database in London, returning that data back to Vercel in San Francisco, and then sending it back to me in the UK, which is obviously an extremely convoluted round trip. So in the last few minutes, I'm going to make one change to our project that's going to make it 10 times faster. Well, watch this. It's going to take 40 or 50 milliseconds when I make this one change. I'm going to add to the root of my project a Vercel.json file, and in that I'm going to have a regions array, which needs to be in quotes. And I know that Vercel's just from memory, but we can look these up actually just for completeness. Vercel regions. Here are all the regions and which AWS data center they map to. So you can see that AWS EUS2 is in London, and here's the code. So if I put LHR1 in here, and then say set Vercel deployment region, and then push origin main. Now Vercel doesn't like this too much, because the reason I care about the data center is because I'm co-locating with the database. But Vercel really wants us to do static generation so that we can just push HTML files out to the edge on their CDN, which makes a lot of sense in many cases. But when you want to hit an API or a database from your endpoint, it makes sense to be able to co-locate your stuff, because the connections between DigitalOcean and Amazon are single-digit milliseconds. It seems it's impressive. So the idea is, by deploying this, and I'm hoping this is deploying in the background, by deploying to London, it means that in the UK I hit AWS in London, which hits DigitalOcean in London, which returns to AWS in London, which comes to me, which is going to be significantly faster than going on 2 round trips out to San Francisco and back. Obviously, as it would be on a plane or in a car or on a bike, if you could do such things. So that's still there. Let's flip back to Vercel's dashboard. We've now got a new deployment from 1 minute ago. Let's head over to that. We'll visit that here, and I'm going to load it up in Firefox again. This is that one. All right, so we load it up. Oh, look, seems faster, doesn't it? Let's check. What's the timing? Yep, 42 milliseconds. So we just made it 10 times faster by making sure that our Lambda functions are deployed in London next to our London-based DigitalOcean database. So it takes 40 milliseconds, which is insanely fast when you think about it. Especially with all the background stuff going on, the caching, the server rendering, or the static pre-rendering, you can start to see how if you can pre-render your homepage as a static HTML file and make a call in the background every few minutes. I used to use Firefox Developer Edition, yes, but the same reason I don't use it for the same... Morning, Chris. I don't use Developer Edition for the same reason I don't use Chrome Canary, because it often has things that cause me issues. So I've spent a lot of time in Canary. I've lost a lot of time in Canary to issues that I thought were my fault, but actually were just bugs in Canary because it's alpha code or beta at best. So I don't use Firefox Developer Edition for the same reason. I sometimes use both of those for testing to see what's coming down the pipe, but I've been bitten too many times using early releases of browsers to continue doing that anymore. So I use regular Firefox like all my visitors. Well, actually, like I wish all my visitors did, but most of them still use other things. Base Next Developer, no, I'm pretty sure, at least it used to be when it first came out, Developer Edition was like closer to the nightly releases than the production release. Yeah, I used to use it because it came with dark theme before regular Firefox had dark theme. Anyway, right, well it's 10:25 now, so we're coming up to 2 hours and I've got to go and do a bunch of work stuff. So I hope it's been entertaining for you all and maybe learned something. We didn't get to Blitz today, but that's probably a really good thing because we've demonstrated all the pieces that we need to understand and that Blitz brings together. Because what Blitz does is it brings together these three fundamental pieces. Next for the page routing and React build process and nice integration with serverless, with Vercel and all of that sort of stuff. And Prisma sorts us out with really easy access to a type-safe database client. And I didn't even get to show you half of the cool stuff with this. Like, you know, we can do all our SQL stuff in here. We can query relationships. So look, I can include the user if I want. I can even specify which data to include on the user. It's kind of like GraphQL. So in many ways, you often don't need GraphQL. So this now will return all the posts, but only and it will include the user's object and only the name of the user. So I can get the user from the user object, add it to the posts if I want to show who posted the post and not be committing all the sins of REST in cases where I'd have to get all of the user information just to show their username. So it's kind of a nice middle ground between the flexibility of GraphQL, which comes with a lot of overheads, and the simplicity of REST, which comes with a lot of data you don't need in a lot of cases. So very happy with Prisma so far, very happy with Next. And React Query is a great little trick for tying them all together and setting up the query cache and making the browsing locally really fast and nice. So yeah, I guess we'll leave it there. We'll be back next week. Let me know if you thought 8:30 was a good time for you in your time zone. We're in British summertime here, I suppose. And perhaps we'll do the same again next week, where we'll spin up our Blitz project, replace our Next project, get Blitz deployed in the cloud with a database, and then we'll start building the app. So yeah, guess we'll leave it there. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, and before I go, I'll just mention, if you like the things that Norfolk developers are doing, I will leave you with the slide of our Patreon page where you can contribute subscription donations. And I'll see you next time. Ciao.